Rivals of the Heart by Simon Cross. The scent of cinnamon, fresh apples, and the sharp tang of wood smoke mingled in the crisp autumn air as the harvest festival came to life. Hawthorn Ridge, nestled in a valley of amber-tipped trees, buzzed with energy as families strolled through streets lined with colorful banners. Laughter rippled among children dashing between booths, while vendors called out to passers-by, extolling the virtues of their wares. Claire Sutton paused by a quilt display, adjusting the basket slung over her arm. Inside lay her piece de resistance, the apple pie recipe perfected through generations of Sutton women. She glanced across the bustling square and spotted him. Daniel Reed stood near the judging table, his calm demeanor unshaken despite the mounting excitement around them. A warm plaid shirt rolled up at the sleeves revealed arms browned from labor on his orchard, and his steady hands carried a pie that had been the talk of last night's town gathering. Her stomach tightened, and she quickly turned away, focusing instead on the familiar faces waving to her as she walked toward the competition area. "Claire, all set to defend your crown?" called Mr. Jennings from his caramel corn stand. She managed a smile. "We'll see," she replied, keeping her tone light, though her pulse betrayed her calm exterior. As Claire approached the long wooden table where the pies would be presented, her confidence wavered. She noticed the way the sunlight caught the golden crust of Daniel's pie, highlighting the latticework so precise it looked like an artist's handiwork. "Morning," Daniel said, his voice low and warm as she set her pie down beside his. "Morning," Claire replied stiffly, offering a quick nod without meeting his gaze. "You've got quite the reputation," Daniel continued, leaning casually against the edge of the table. "Three-time winner, if I'm not mistaken." Claire shot him a sidelong glance, her lips pressed into a tight line. "And you've been here, what, a year?" Bold move entering the big leagues. Daniel chuckled, the sound deep and unhurried. "Figured I'd aim high. Besides, it's not about winning, well, not entirely. I just enjoy baking." Her eyes narrowed. "Then why does it feel like you've been gunning for my spot since you arrived?" The corner of his mouth lifted in a half smile, and for a moment, Claire couldn't tell if he was teasing her or being genuine. "You're the best, Claire. Who wouldn't want to challenge the best?" She opened her mouth to retort. But before she could, the festival's announcer called for contestants to step back as the judges began their rounds. The judges moved methodically down the line, murmuring amongst themselves after each bite. Claire stood apart, twisting the hem of her sweater, every glance at Daniel irritatingly calm. He caught her eye once and tipped his head slightly as if to say, "Relax." "Why should I relax?" Claire muttered under her breath. "He's the one who should be nervous." When the head judge approached the final two pies, hers and Daniel's, she felt the square fall silent. It was as though the festival had held its collective breath, waiting for the verdict. "Claire Sutton's apple pie?" the judge announced, slicing into the golden crust. He lifted a forkful, took a slow bite, and closed his eyes briefly in apparent appreciation. Next was Daniel's pie, a mixed berry creation. The vibrant filling glistened like jewels as the judge cut through it. Another bite, another contemplative nod. Minutes passed like hours before the judge finally stepped forward to the microphone, clearing his throat. In third place, he began, "We have Martha Jennings with her peach cobbler." Polite applause rippled through the crowd, though Claire barely heard it over the pounding in her chest. In second place, we have Daniel Reed with his mixed berry pie. A collective murmur rose from the spectators. Daniel bowed his head slightly, accepting the ribbon handed to him. Then he glanced at Claire, offering a small smile that caught her completely off guard. And in first place, for the fourth year in a row, Claire Sutton with her apple pie. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Claire's response was delayed. Her eyes lingered on Daniel's calm, unshaken expression, and instead of the triumph she'd expected to feel, there was only a strange, hollow ache. Later that afternoon, Claire found herself by the cider press, sipping from a steaming mug as the festivities continued. She spotted Daniel leaning against a nearby fence post, surrounded by a few townsfolk congratulating him on his pie. "Care to take a walk?" he asked, catching her eye as the others dispersed. Claire hesitated. She could say no, but curiosity tugged at her. "All right," she said, her voice cautious. They walked in companionable silence at first, the crunch of leaves beneath their boots the only sound. The festival's buzz grew fainter as they wandered to the edge of the orchard that bordered the square. "You're not what I expected," Claire admitted finally, breaking the quiet. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching into a small smile. "What did you expect?" "Someone cocky. Someone who'd gloat." She hesitated. "You're not that." Daniel laughed softly. "I don't see much point in gloating. Besides, your pie deserved the win." Best crust I've ever tasted. Claire blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. You really think so? I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. His tone was so earnest, Claire felt her cheeks warm. For the first time, she noticed the faint dimple that appeared when he smiled. The way his eyes squinted at the corners. He wasn't just her competition, he was human. As the sun dipped lower, painting the orchard in shades of gold and crimson, they found a bench beneath an ancient oak tree. Daniel leaned back, his hands resting loosely on his knees, while Claire fidgeted with the edge of her scarf. Why baking? She asked suddenly. Most guys around here are more into hay bales and harvests. He grinned. I'm into those too. But baking's always been my thing. My mom used to say I had a knack for it, like I could taste how something should be before I even made it. Claire smiled faintly, imagining a younger Daniel in a kitchen covered in flour. Your mom must be proud. She was, he said quietly. The weight of his words hung between them, and Claire looked down, tracing patterns in the dirt with her boot. I'm sorry, she said softly. Daniel shook his head. Don't be. She'd have loved this town, loved the festival. Claire felt a pang of regret for how she'd viewed him as nothing more than an adversary. She thought of her own mother, always in the kitchen, her hands steady as they taught Claire the family recipes. She taught me to bake too, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. Every pie I make feels like she's still here with me. Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. Maybe that's why your pies are so good. They've got heart. The words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time all day, Claire felt herself relax. By the time they returned to the festival, the square had transformed. Strings of twinkling lights illuminated the booths, casting a warm glow over the cobblestone streets. Music drifted from a makeshift stage where a local band played lively tunes, and the air was thick with the scent of caramel apples and roasted chestnuts. Claire and Daniel paused near the cider stand, the hum of conversation and laughter swirling around them. I have an idea, Daniel said suddenly, his eyes bright. Claire tilted her head, intrigued. What kind of idea? Next year, he began, what if we teamed up instead of competing? She stared at him, surprised. You mean enter together? Why not? Daniel's grin was infectious. Between your crust and my filling, we'd be unstoppable. Claire laughed, the sound light and unguarded. You're assuming I'd agree to share my crust recipe. Is that a no? He teased, raising an eyebrow. She hesitated, then smiled. It's a maybe. Good enough for me. As the festival closed down, Claire found herself watching Daniel as he spoke with townsfolk, his easy laughter blending with the music. There was something about him that felt solid, dependable, qualities she hadn't noticed in the months they'd been rivals. The realization came softly, like the first snowflake of winter. She didn't mind the idea of working with him. In fact, she was starting to look forward to it.